This week, I had a tough talk with somebody who runs one of the largest comic retailer establishments on the West Coast. And so I'm not going to name names because what happens is if people associate with me, of course, there ends up a problem within the comic industry. I got security called on me just for attending a panel at San Diego Comic Con by IDW Publishing. Absolutely crazy that they act like this. But the fact that they act like this causes problems and it causes ripples all the way down the line. And so when I talked to this retailer, the retailer told me that sales are way down to the point where even this large establishment that's like a very big comic shop people might have heard of might have to end up closing up shop. Now, if this is happening with the bigger comic establishments, you know that the smaller ones are struggling even more. We've seen signs of the comic shops closing over the pandemic. We've seen it since the Marvel Now initiative when they replaced all their characters with diversity characters. Since DC launched its 5G initiative where they're going to replace all their characters in quote future state with diversity characters. This has been happening all the way across the board. They have Tom Taylor pushing gay Superman now as they're about to lose the license into the public domain of the old original Superman. And so this is happening and people are not buying these comics. They've really tuned out of everything. Now, when I talked to the retailer told me there's a couple factors at work. One, the main talent that's actually good talent, the good writers, the good artists don't actually want to work for Marvel or DC. And when they do get hired for Marvel and DC, they don't put their best efforts forward with it. They kind of put it as a paycheck. They phone it in. Now, they do this because they know they're not going to be able to own any of the characters. They don't really create new characters. They know that they're not going to be able to own their storylines, so they don't do too much. And they know that royalties are not going to flood in. Even if they get the movies, there's people who are talking about getting royalty checks of $0 from DC Comics at this point. It's absolutely crazy. Literal checks that say $0 on it. And so it's insane. And so nobody actually wants to put forth work into these companies. So if you have the good talent who's one, either will not work for them, or B, they will put in like less than stellar effort, you get problems. Now, Jonathan Hickman, who's one of the writers that people really love out there, not a fan of him on the channel so much, but I understand that a lot of people do like his work, has a new Ultimate Invasion kind of comic out there. And so far, reaction to it's been ho-hum, and there's been a problem with sales because they actually put the price tag of this comic book at $9 in the comic shop, which is not an impulse buy whatsoever. So, of course, retailers are grumbling. You've got your top talent here, and you actually don't give an incentive for people to buy it. It's absolutely crazy from the comic industry to do this. Part two is they're hiring mediocre talent for most of the books. So while they might have a couple books here or there that have that top talent on it, they're putting out like 80, 100 books a month of just like mediocre talent or worse that are coming from the foreign countries like the Philippines and things like that, who really are just glorified sketchmen who are drafting and copying other things before. So there's really nothing there that's special to look at either. I'm noticing a trend in comics. They do a lot of like realistic looking art and things like that, but you look and you can tell it's like traced or rendered from photographs rather than somebody actually doing some art and creating their own visions with things. And this is happening on the writing end too. Nobody's really creating or making vision things. Now, this retailer was very careful because we were in public, and so didn't want to say anything about like the diversity issue that they're having with all this stuff. Of course, when you make Superman gay, a large percentage of the population does not want to read that. And since your audience primarily for a superhero book with Superman is straight men, you're going to lose a lot of that audience. You're not going to gain back a lot of gay audience with that because there's just not enough gay men who are interested in Superman to be able to do something like that. So you lose a ton of readers when you do things like that. Now, this retailer, framed it as characters getting mashed up. And so they're doing things like Black Widow, I guess, now has a Venom suit, which is insane. So it's like, why would you want to do that? There's all these Hulks and different Wolverines and all this stuff. You've got so many different characters like brandishing the same powers, the same names, they're mashing them up, that none of them are special anymore. They're all interchangeable. Every story ends up interchangeable. And then you put the woke identity politics into those stories too, and you put a bunch of talking heads panels just to like kind of lecture your audience about their political stuff. You really don't get stories that people want to read at all. So this is happening across the board, and it's a big problem. Like I said, the retailer told me sales are way down and that things are becoming a big issue there. Now, there's a lot of independent comics that are making up for this. I just read a wonderful book called 8 Billion Genies from Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. I just read Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips's new masterpiece, Night Fever. And this stuff's really good, but the problem with these books is they get good word of mouth, but they don't really bring people into comic shops like Spider-Man or Superman or Batman does. So when you put bad talent on those and things are not working and you're really phoning it in, you don't get a lot of people going into comic shops. Those books that I'm talking about, these indie ones, once somebody's in a comic shop, you can go, this book's great, you should check it out. And then that will sell at that point. But it's a real problem for retailers when those big brands don't get butts in the seats. It's the same thing we're finding with movie theaters with all the Disney movies happening. Now, the retailer says these companies really seem like they've given up. The publishers, he's talked to them and all that, seem like they just don't really care anymore, and that there's brass up ahead who is putting budget constraints so that they hire the lesser talent, the woke talent who will work for cheaper. On all these books, because they really don't have the resources to do anything else. Even though comics is a minuscule budget for these studios and all that, they still are just trying to just keep the IPs and copyrights in place. They really don't care about the production of these and future stories. It's really sad to watch, but that's what happens when you have giant corporations owning all of these brands. It's a big problem, and it is only going to get worse. Now, on the independent front, I think it's only going to get better. My sales have been way up over the last couple of years. We've seen what Eric July's done, what Ethan Van Sciver's done, and what Shadiversity's done with their books. I really think we're on the precipice of a new golden age for books, and I think we've put out a wonderful superhero tale with Flying Sparks right here, which is way better than anything out there from Marvel and DC whatsoever. People have read this, have said this story is fantastic, so I appreciate you guys doing that and supporting our channel here and supporting our efforts, because we really work hard here, and that's going to be the future. Now, do I expect Marvel and DC to come, beating down my doors to hire me? Probably not. It's all about politics over there. The people who have been hired at this point are all political operatives. They're not comic people anymore, which is really sad, because we could have something beautiful if they'd all work together and actually try to have that diversity of thought and diversity of politics that they pretend like they have. All right, leave a comment down below with what you think about this. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.